All right, so it looks like we have a full board. It's 7 o'clock on the dot. I'm going to remind the public that this meeting is being taped and recorded. I will start the meeting with a roll call vote. Margaret Sweet,
Present.
Kevin Estes,
Here.
Nick Cyclepatis,
Present.
Helio Rosa,
Present.
and Kevin Mello present. We also have Ross with us today. Everybody knows Ross. And I also want to thank John Hanson is here. He is our interim, whatever you want to call him, stand-in town planner. And as we go through the process of finding a new planner, he was our past planner. So I don't know if everyone has had a chance to meet him, but he's here with us today. So we will start the meeting tonight with agenda item number 1, public hearing, application for planning board special permit, 413 State Road. John, I'm sorry, Ross, did you want to give us the rundown on this?
Do we need a vote to open the public meeting?
Thank you. I'll do a roll call vote. Kevin Estes,
Yes.
Margaret Sweet,
Yes.
Nick Cyclepatis,
Yes.
Helio Rosa,
Yes.
and Kevin Mello, yes.
Okay. I believe we would also need to waive reading in the notice unless we want that. The newspaper article.
Okay, so we have a request to waive the reading.
Moved.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor, Kevin Estes,
Yes.
Margaret Sweet,
Yes.
Nick Cyclepatis,
Yes.
Helio Rosa,
Yes.
and Kevin Mello, yes.
Okay. So this application is for a special permit for a proposed 2-unit residential apartment building and hair salon located at 413 State Road. It is map 166, lot 134. Per Article 24 of the Dartmouth zoning bylaw, hair salons would require 3 parking spaces per operator station. And per Article 18 of the zoning bylaw, the 2-unit residential apartments would require 4 parking spaces, thus requiring 13 parking spaces. And there are 9, if I'm correct, Peter, being proposed, or is it 10?
So actually 10.
10,
Three
okay.
in the garage and 7 within the parking facility.
Okay. So at this point, Peter, if you want to give an overview.
Yep, can I share my screen?
Yes, please.
Who needs to share the screen? Just checking.
Nope, I'm here. Can you see it?
No.
Can you see it now?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Peter Cruz from Cab Engineering Solutions, located at 25 Elm Street, New Bedford, Mass. 02744, here tonight to present for the special permit. As just to reiterate what Ross had mentioned, the proposed use is a hair salon with 2-unit residential apartments for a total of 13 parking spots. Originally, this parcel actually had 3 units within the building with a gift shop that was run out of the.
Route 6.
What's that? Oh, originally, like I was saying, the house was a 3-unit and the gift shop was being run out of the garage. And then at some time during its lifetime, the gift shop ended up in the house as the as time went on. It is the former Holy Tree gift shop here was located. And the original parking for that use totaled the required total parking spots for that was 10 spots, and they only had 2 on site within the current driveway that's there today. So essentially eight of those parking spots ended up on Summit Ave parking. We are proposing to develop the back of the parcel to contain 7 parking spots. And there is an existing 3-car garage today that will be renovated and reused for parking. And I do have another plan that I did not submit, which sort of shows if the demonstration plan that if we had to bring on 3 other parking spots at a later date, if it was a nuisance to the neighborhood, we could utilize the front of the parcel for 3 additional parking spots, utilizing the existing curb cut that's there today.
Okay, very good. Any questions from the board? Actually, I'm sorry, any questions from the public first? We do the public first.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's your name and address for the record, please?
Andrew Sylvia, 9
Yep.
Summit Avenue. I'm in a butter.
Okay,
And I just want, in the letter we received from the town, it said they only had 9 parking places. Now they're saying 10. I just want to get some clarification.
okay. Peter, if you could clarify that, please.
So originally we had 9 parking spots, but we're requesting a waiver on the dimensional size of the parking stalls. The required parking dimensions are 10 by 20. We're requesting a waiver to bring them down to 9 by 20, which is pretty standard parking stalls. So in doing that, we actually gain a parking spot by going from 10 by 20 to 9 by 20. Thus, we're coming up with 10 spots and just reducing any overflow parking that would end up on Summit Ave.
Okay, are there any other waivers that you're requesting that we're not aware of at this time?
There is, but I believe, that's more for site plan review, or do you want to go through them now?
It would be good to know ahead of time. what they
Okay,
are.
so the other waivers that we're requesting, besides the parking stall dimension, we're requesting a waiver for section 24.3.d.2, which is the required 2-way drive, 24 feet wide. We're providing a 20-foot wide entrance. The other waiver we're requesting is 24.3.j. There is no bike parking being proposed for the facility. The other waiver we're looking for is 24.3.m.5, which is the required curb cut max width of 30 feet. And we're asking that, we're providing 54.5 feet, and that's due to the existing garages here. We can't change that. It's an existing condition, so we're asking for a waiver on that. The other waiver is 24.3.m.6, which is the traffic impact statement. There's really no change in use. They're both similar uses. So we don't see that a traffic impact statement would be necessary. Article 24.3.n, fire lane. Due to the site constraints and and how tight it is, we can't supply a fire lane. And then lastly, Article 24.4a, 4b, 4c, 4d, 4e, 4f, which is the landscaping. And that is because we're under 25 parking spots, and a lot of those sections are geared for more for parking facilities greater than 25.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Mr. Sylvia, did that satisfy your question?
Yep, I understand what he said. I'm just a little concerned. It's a very busy area with the little plaza next door across the street with a restaurant, and we have cars parked on our sidewalk constantly. And I'm just the 7 parking places. I'm very familiar with a lot. I'm just curious, are they going to be back-to-back parking places, or are they going to be individual separate parking places?
Mr. Sylvia, can you see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Yep, so they're individually 7 parking spots, 1 accessible parking
Gotcha.
would require van striping. And then the other 3 will be in the existing garage.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. This is Phil Rose. I'm in a butter for 9 Summit Avenue.
Okay, Mr. Rose?
So you're looking for a waiver for the required parking. This property has street side on Route 6 and Summit Avenue. It looks like you'll have no street parking on Summit Avenue adjacent to the property because it's garage and then driveway. And then to the corner, you can't park from the corner to the driveway because you're so close to Route 6. So the burden of additional parking will be on the rest of Summit Avenue, not on, nobody's going to park on Summit Avenue in front of your property. And nobody's going to park in front of your property on Route 6. So any additional parking that you haven't met the minimum requirement for will put a burden on everybody else on Summit Avenue.
So we're looking for a reduction of 3. The business, the hair salon is appointment only. So that will lessen the traffic for the hair salon. So you're right, there is no parking directly adjacent to the property. I think it is a public way. I know the restaurants and everyone spills over into Summit Avenue. But I feel that, this use is gonna be less detrimental to the neighborhood compared to what was here before, the gift shop, where there was only 2 parking spaces and, everyone would spill over into Summit Ave. So I think in trying to better the neighborhood, supplying the 7 parking spots and the 3 in the garage, alleviating 10 spots that could eventually could have been out on Summit Ave, reduces the burden to the adjacent homeowners. And we really are only looking for 3 spots, which, in talking with my client, I don't think we're gonna have any issues or any overspill, because again, it is overflow parking. And if you're looking at 4 spots for the tenants, and then, everything else is left for staff and guests. So I don't see that many spilling over to Summit Ave, but that is what we're here, is for a reduction of 3 versus what the previous use was, which had 8 spilling over.
Realistically, if you have 3 stylists, you'll have 3 people. The stylists will each have a car, so there's 3. The 3 in the chairs, that's 6. And then the next client comes in before the present client leaves. So each stylist is going to take up 9 spaces. The 3 for the stylist, 3 for the people in the chair, and the 3 for the next customers coming in after the next appointment. So to say, well, it's only 2, it's not. Unless they're going to book hours out, which they're not. And is it just 3 stylists? Are they going to have anybody doing nails? Are they going to do tanning? Is it just 3 chairs?
Just 3 chairs for stylish.
Okay. I'm thinking that you really need to develop those 3 spots on State Road, because I think this is going to be an incredible burden to the Summit Avenue. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, thank
very
you.
good. Thank you, Mr. Rose.
Hi,
Anyone else from the
my
public?
name is Paula Rose, and I also own part of the house on 9 Summit Avenue, which abuts the property. Now, why are you allowing 2 cars for the renters? How do you know they're not gonna have 4 cars apiece? Like, is that written in their contract that they're only allowed to have 2 cars?
That is what
How
our
do you know they're not-
bylaws, that is what our bylaws state, Mrs. Rose.
That's your bylaws? Okay.
Yes, so,
And,
you know.
Okay, yeah.
They are performing to the standards.
okay. Is there gonna be a receptionist working in the salon or just the 3 hairstylists? Or are you-
Just the 3 hairstylists.
Okay. And there's no room anywhere for expansion? Is there like an empty floor that eventually is gonna be used by another stylist once you're established and you get your, if this does go through? How do we know
Nope.
that that's gonna happen?
As of right now, it is just 3 working stations.
Okay, but so once those 3 stations are filled, is there an area? I've worked in salons for quite a while, and all of a sudden a wall gets taken down and, you know, Miss Susie comes in to do nails and now they're standing. So how do we know it's not gonna be now 6 stylists working at a time? How do we know that? I mean, it just happens. And how do we know that's not gonna happen?
I think that there are other chairs that do come on. I believe we would have to go back to the building department and request those additional license and most likely come in front of you for parking.
Okay. And if you did develop those 3 spots onto State Road, would that mean they would back into the highway to leave? How would that parking situation work out?
I think they would just do a 3-point turn on the actual property and be able to get out on the state road.
It doesn't sound too sure. It's like, I feel like we're not getting definite answers. I feel as though we.
Oh, there's plenty of room. Here they are. They would back, go and just do a 3-point turn and head out.
And we could not control, you know, you may get a person who just backs out into State Road.
Correct.
That is not
Yeah.
the applicant's
Sure.
prerogative to, you know.
Yeah.
The curb cut, the important thing here is the curb cut is pre-existing, because I don't believe the state would allow a new curb cut to be put there.
Okay.
So that is
So when-
pre-existing.
So when you're looking at the plans and you see the handicap spot, is that included in what you're asking for? Is that an additional spot?
That is one of the spots being proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Andrew Sylvia again, just one last comment. And again, trying to be reasonable here, but you know, I was down a few weeks ago and our mom and dad, we all grew up there for 30, 40 years in that house. And I noticed all the work being done on the corner already. So it's, you know, it's coming from the business world, you know, we try to get the facts first and do the construction second. And it just concerns me that all that work's being done already, but the variances that are asked for haven't been approved yet. So I don't know, that bothers me slightly, but I just wanted to, you know, for the record, mention that.
And the work being done to the building is purely exterior only to make it weather tight before the winter. There's no interior work being done.
Okay. Anybody else from the public?
Yes, this is Mike Sylvia. Sounds like you're being overwhelmed by Sylvias and Roses. I also lived in that house for a lot of years. I just want to comment on a statement that was made about Marianne Sylvia's shop, which she ran there for a long time. The traffic for that shop was very, 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 very minimal. 1 or 2 clients, period. It wasn't helter-skelter like what we're looking at here. And I heard you make a comment before about, well, the there was traffic before for the gift shop, the equivalent traffic, will follow the same situation where it'll find itself parking on Summit Avenue. That's apples and bananas. The shop was a tiny little operation, a one-person operation. She couldn't earn a living with that shop, and her husband had a full-time job. So that was more out of, it was called the Scandinavian import, I believe. And it was all Scandinavian items. And, but the amount of traffic was not even worth mentioning here in comparison. So I want to make sure you're clear that overflow traffic will take place on Summit Avenue, that in no way, shape, or form can compare to what it was in the past. Plus, the businesses that are on the other side of Summit Avenue, they've got a parking lot, they overflow. I think the town needs to take serious consideration in terms of where is this traffic going to go? And, is the safety of, the public at risk? And if we have laws, relative to parking, why is it that we can't abide by parking restrictions? And we have to have a session like this to see if we can, deviate from what's established law. I understand that, there are, possible reconfigurations and so on and so forth. But if there are existing standards, why are we spending time trying to, maneuver around an existing, configuration by law and squeeze it down? And I really don't have anything else to add, but I did want to make it clear that you can't compare Mary Ann's shop to any business activity you plan on having with the hairdressing configuration.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Sylvia. And just to let you know, I was basing that just on the bylaw requirements. I wasn't familiar with the whole setup that she had, but I was just basing the numbers based on the bylaw numbers. That's where the statement came from. So I apologize.
Yeah, no problem. But I mean, and it's good that we're having this meeting because I was there I moved there. I think I was still in 7th grade. I'm 74 years old, going to be 75. So I can tell you, historically, ain't nobody going to be on this call that's got more years of living on that street in that house than me. And it's apples and bananas. And with that business that is going to show up there, the amount of cars on Summit Avenue are going to increase substantially, which, is a concern that I have. Public safety, people backing up, in driveways that they have no right to back up into. And it's concerning.
Can I ask another question if you don't mind?
Yes, Mr. Rose.
Oh, thank you. Unfortunately, winter's coming and it looks like you got a lot of stuff going on in that little parcel of land. Where is all that snow gonna go when they come and plow it? I know it might be sounding like a silly question, but I'm just curious where this is all gonna go. And my second question is, you might not know this answer, but is there going to be a service that comes in taking away towels? That's another, van backing into this business. And like I said, you might not know the answer, but it's just something else that it's just going to be more of a nuisance. We've all lived there. We've all witnessed horrible accidents at that corner. And you're going to come around the corner. I know you can't park there. There's a fire hydrant, but maybe somebody will because they're late for their appointment and they want to just get in there. So it's just a question I would like an answer for if you could get it for me. Thank you.
Okay, no, you're welcome. So I think I can speak to the snow removal. If it's a substantial snow event, we'll be hauling the snow off site to another site. If it's something small enough that can be handled on site, we would use some of the grass area around the parking lot. to convey or store some of that storage, but outside of the drainage swale aspect of it. And as for the towel services, I can't really speak to that.
It's Mike Sylvia here again. I just had another question. If for some reason, this is approved and it's determined after a period of time that cheapers, this consideration that was approved really was a mistake. Is there a backup plan if the traffic was not correctly calculated? If the traffic becomes a nuisance, the police department is ready to pull their hair out. Is there a backup plan should this be approved? And what would that backup plan be?
So the landowners are here. They've showed that they can they've demonstrated that they don't need waivers. They could simply add the 3 spots. They could add the bike rack. The driveway width, there's no driveway because of this site. So they're here to exercise their rights as landowners. What we traditionally do as the planning board is say, okay, you can show us, so if there's a problem with too many cars from this business that can be demonstrated, we would force them to put those additional spots in.
Oh, okay.
So there's no, once we approve a plan,
Right.
we don't have the right to take that right away from the
Okay.
landowner.
Okay.
They pay their taxes
Sure.
and they keep their property up. That's their right.
Okay.
So we're really here. They're asking, we really don't want to develop these 3 spots. But we're listening to the neighbors. The planning board, once we're done with the public hearing, the planning board will be able to ask questions and debate on that. And we can say yes, no to the waivers, and we can proceed with either plan. But once we proceed with the plan, they have the right to develop and use it. So there is no way to shut, I mean, obviously if there's creating a public nuisance, but I don't think hairdressers in general create public nuisances.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So anyone else from the public, please?
Andrew Sylvia? No, I'm all set. I appreciate the time.
No, I appreciate the public comments. Thank you for letting us know. So at this time, in the public hearing, is there any planning board member that has a question for the proponent?
I have a few questions, Kevin.
Yes.
So let me just state that I equivocally care about the parking issue on Summit Avenue for those who are single family or multifamily residences compared to these 2 corners that are on Route 6. But I equally care about the landowner's rights on such a corner and such a piece of property that in many ways deserves to be commercial and used as deemed here in this plan. So with both in mind, I have a few questions as it relates to, number 1, the front yard section where they could add 3 spots, and the proposer mentioned a 3-point turn. I was just curious. I was just looking online and counting fence sections, but they don't seem to be equal in size. If the parking spots on the front, the most northerly part of the house facing Route 6, were coming off of the structure, so their radius, their radial would be northeast. You come down Route 6, you take a right onto the grassy area now, the front of your car would point north, front of your car would point northeast. Then you would back out in a 2-point turn and face Route 6 again. I'm curious, in that application, could they fit 4? And the reason I'm asking such is, if they could fit 4, and designate that solely to the apartments, the tenants. And in conjunction with that, rather than maintain the garages for the proposed 3, could we then, as a planning board, suggest getting rid of the garages, adding 3 more there without the striped line that we see on the plan for better flow and better visibility to the entire lot? And would it be better for the business, the property owner, emergency services, and everybody in that regard?
I don't think the town has the money to pay for what the value the landowner would lose in taking those garages down. Because the value, there's value to those garages. So to propose that when they have the necessary site, the necessary space to put the 3 spots in, just in a different location, I don't see.
That's fine. I respect that. I'm actually taking into consideration as a business owner myself and a rental property owner, I'm taking into consideration that if you could separate the function of the 2 parking areas, those for residents, period, the end, and those for the business, you'd probably have better control of property in its entirety. And then I'm also trying to understand and make some consideration for the abutters. It's clear, because I've experienced it, where I myself had to park on that street when I was picking up takeout food, for instance, at different times. So I understand the concern, but I also understand the landowner's right. So that's fine. I appreciate that.
Anyone else on the board?
Kevin, this is Kevin. I've got a
Kevin
couple
Estes.
questions here.
Yeah.
As the lot exists right now, what is the ratio of impervious to pervious surface? Or as a percentage?
So originally, the existing was about 30%, and now the proposed brings it up to roughly about 60%.
Okay, and in this zone, what is the required maximum?
There is no max. The lot coverage was 65 was the max. But there is no green space requirement.
So if you add these 3 spots, will that bring you to 70%? Will that bring you?
I have not done the math on that, so I apologize.
Okay.
It might get us closer. Mr. Mello, yeah. They might get us closer to the maximum lot coverage.
So Ross, this is not in an aquifer, or John, this is not in an aquifer protection area?
It is not.
It is not. Okay, thank you.
Kevin, I have a couple of questions.
Okay, Kevin, are you all set?
I'm all set. Thanks.
Okay, go ahead, Margaret.
Sorry, Kevin, I didn't mean to cut in on you.
No worries.
On the first page down below, it says total required parking spaces 13, providing 9 off-street parking. So are you providing 9 or 10?
I'm providing 10.
Okay, so the plan that I'm looking at still says 9.
Correct.
So
So
earlier he mentioned that he's asking for the spaces to be reduced to 9 by 20.
Right.
Which
got
will provide the 10th spot.
Okay. Also, is this a historic, have you gone before the Historic Commission?
We did meet with the building inspector and also historical, and the house was claimed non-historical.
Thank you.
You're
And,
welcome.
And how about the fire chief?
So as part of the renovations to the house will be fully sprinkled and alarmed to meet the Massachusetts code and the town code regulations.
Okay, and exits for the apartment, front and back, how are the exits gonna?
Yeah, that's all gonna meet code. I do have a design, we do have the architect on the floor, on the call if you'd like to hear from Armando Pereira. Armando,
Yes.
can you just go into the ability, the floor plan, with Margaret?
Just for the apartment.
Good evening. So,
Hi.
the apartments, the one that's on the second floor has a front and rear set of stairs that exists, and that's gonna remain. And the one that's in the back has 2 means of egress as required. So
Okay.
we made sure that nothing would be compromised. And like Peter said, on a project of this caliber, you are required under Mass General Law and NFPA and also the building code in Chapter 9 that the building would have to be sprinkled. So this building will be fully protected.
Thank you. That's important. And I'll just say at this point, since you have the ability to put 3 parking spots there, maybe that's what, you know, what we should do is put the 3 parking spots there, because that will alleviate some of the parking off the street. Just my feelings for now. Thank you very much.
Very good, Margaret. Thank you.
Kevin, I have a few questions if that's okay.
Absolutely, Helio. Thank you.
So I'm going to rattle off some notes that I took in reviewing the plans. Some of them particular relate to the waivers being requested. Regarding the fire lane, you mentioned, and it's on the plans obviously as well. Has the calculations been determined whether a fire lane is required by code, given the building area, the building height, and the use?
No, it hasn't. It's just, we don't have any room to supply a fire lane, so that's why I was asking for the waiver. I was just going through the site plan review, chapter 24, and that was one of them that we could not supply for the site. Just
So-
because of the site constraint.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. I would suggest that we clarify or get clarification of whether by fire code a fire lane is required. If it's determined based on the building size, occupancy, and number of stories that one is going to be required, even if it's fully sprinklered, it might make the waiver request a moot point. So I'll leave it with that one there.
So in the past, Helio, what we have done is there is a fire lane here in a sense, because the parking is away from the building. We have asked the proponent stripe the area. I know you can't see my arrows, but at the end of the walkway up against the building, yep, we have asked just for striping, and that creates the fire lane, because that all the way to the other end of the property, all the way to, yep, there you go. We simply stripe that for no parking, and that creates a fire lane. So I that was one of the suggestions I was going to ask to. I want to minimize waivers, if not remove them all. So that would satisfy my quest for a fire lane.
I agree, Kevin. I just, between Mr. Cruz and Mr. Pereira, if they can just validate that no other fire lane requirements around the rest of the building, because it may have an impact on the overall site design of things that we aren't yet aware of or not being presented on this, it will just close the issue of the waiver and the requirements for the fire lane, in my view.
Okay.
Thank you.
Additionally, the accessible path, I couldn't make out on the plans that the site design has the 2% maximum slope from the accessible spaces into the building. It probably is compliant, but I didn't see any grading or notes that the 2% slope is required. Again, my comment is based solely just that there won't be any further modifications required in the event that the 2% isn't accommodated through the rest of the site.
So that was one of DPW's comments, and we are addressing that by adding spot grades along the travel path or the striped area So we will have that. We, at this time, we don't have the revised plan, but
Okay.
it is all compliant.
Okay, great. Again, our purview is just the information as it pertains to the site plan review.
Yep.
I'm also curious if you could provide a floor plan for the garage itself. From the plans that I saw, you're showing the garage, the existing structure, as essentially a block of space and not necessarily the interior dimensions. I think it'd be important to understand the layout of the parking spaces to demonstrate compliance for the parking spaces themselves, just so that we assure that the spaces that you're proposing as legal parking are become a matter of record.
Okay, will do.
Regarding the vehicle, the traffic patterns in and out of the site, I know you're requesting one of the waivers. Has the analysis been done for the radiuses getting in and out of the parking spaces been conducted? I think the first number of spaces from the handicap parking forward should be fine with that 20-foot radius. I am curious how the last parking space, or maybe the last two parking spaces, how that maneuverability happens within the site. It might require, based on this, that somebody parking in that last parking space may be required to back out of the driveway. Has that been considered?
So, Mr. Rosa, we do, in this case, the lane, the aisle width actually widens out to the required 24 feet. So you do have an extra 4 feet to be able to back out and then pull out forward. So the site drive itself is 20 feet for the length of the garage, and then it opens up to becoming 24 at that point. So it transitions from the corner of the garage at 20 feet, and then it transitions, opens it, the travel lane actually, or the aisle width, opens up to 24 feet.
If I read the plan correctly, that last the space, the aisle directly in front of that last parking space tends to slope or angle slightly inward towards that parking space. So you really technically don't have a full aisle in front of that last parking space. What impact, if any, would that have on safely getting in and out of that spot?
I think backing up, they would just angle themselves and come out.
Do you have the ability to provide that turning radius on a plan, even if it's supplemental information?
We can do that.
Thank you. Another comment, you also have no accommodations for trash disposal. There's no room for, that I can see, there's no identified space for either a small, 5-ton roll-off. What is the plan for trash?
So the trash, right, as of right now, the applicant has spoken to a third-party trash disposal, and the bins will be located within the 3 garages. Each tenant will have 1 bay for a parking spot and the trash receptacles. They would be the standard totes. So each one will have 1 tote and 1 recycle. And it would be up to them to wheel them out to the curb for pickup at that point.
So in consideration of the waiver, I would also recommend that the trash disposal scenarios you described be entered as a matter of record submission.
Yeah, I believe it's part of the project narrative that was submitted.
Okay. I can go back and look at that. Landscape coverage. I didn't see any plan. Again, you can point it out to me if I've missed it, which I apologize if I do. Is there any consideration for mitigating some of the landscaping recommendations, whether it's through trees, planting of shrubs, and masking the parking spaces from the abutters?
So let me just get into this thing. So here's the planting, the landscaping plan.
Okay.
I know I didn't show this because we were doing the special permit, but as part of site plan, we do have landscaping occurring on site. we have these, this bioswale with, numerous of plantings within the swale area and a bunch of plantings along the south, south facing, of the building. We're unable to plant any big caliber trees as per your bylaws or any screening in here. So, we're proposing a fence, just because this drops off to become a bioswale to meet some of the stormwater requirements. So, thus asking for a waiver to get away from plantings along
And
the
what-
property.
What type of fence would you propose?
I believe we're calling for PVC, I believe.
So I would suggest submitting that as a matter of record as well.
Okay.
And Mr. Cruz, regarding the accessibility to the space, and maybe this is a question for Mr. Pereira. Is the building required to have just the one accessible entrance?
So you are required to have an accessible entrance into the commercial space, yes.
At least one, correct?
Yes, so the requirements are to make sure that a handicapped person has accessibility to the space. They don't tell you that it has to be 2 or 3. It just says you're required to have access.
Thank you, Mr. Pereira. And my last comment is regarding the parking. I think it was Mr. Sylvia that had mentioned this as well, and I think we were on the same lines. I calculate in my own head, there's 3 chairs in the narrative. Assuming a car for each employee, assuming a car for a client that's there at the same time. Let's leave the 4 vehicles aside for the residents. There could be another series of 3 cars for a client that's next in line. And I noticed on the floor plan as well that was submitted, there is space for the stylist. There's also a space for a color room and a lash room. I know it was stated before that it's 1 client, 1 time. I think the floor plan could suggest that there might be more than 1 client at one time if somebody's using a chair, and the same stylist might have somebody in an alternate room. So I say that because I think that requires a little bit of clarification. And what is ultimately the true burden to add those 3 spots that we're talking about off State Road?
If you don't mind me answering real quick, when you said about the color room, that color room is basically a room that only a person or a stylist that's actually going to color somebody's hair. That's not a room that you would go to get your hair colored. It's more like a storage area and a mixing area. So that room is off to nobody other than employees. Again, one of the things that we have to remember is that this is by appointment. And you got to remember that between the 2 times that people will be there and the time that somebody's going to be arriving, you also have some time that you have to do cleaning of the floors and also cleaning the area. So this is something that it is a scheduling procedure that they're going to have to do. And again, it's not a walk-in service. I'd be concerned if it was a walk-in service, but if it's by appointment only, that can be scheduled in and you can give a certain number of minutes between clients.
Thank you, Mr. Pereira. And the question regarding the burden?
The burden, I'm sorry, maybe I missed that one.
Of adding the 3 spaces that we've discussed along State Road.
I think the burden,
Peter would have to answer that.
Yeah, I think the burden would be, it would put us over the maximum impervious area. It would be another area to sort of treat for stormwater. The site's tough enough to manage all of it on site. I think the other concern I have would be State Road itself. So I think that would be a burden to deal with also. I think that's it.
So thank you, Mr. Cruz. I would suggest for the board's consideration that the burden be further clarified. It's one thing that this body will have to weigh is managing the burden of adding those 3 spaces versus the burden of not having those extra 3 spaces. That, to me, that waiver in particular is probably of the biggest magnitude.
All set?
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. Anyone else, anything else from the board?
I want to just close with something, Kevin.
Okay.
We all, the proposer, we, the board, the abutters, and anyone else listening and or concerned needs to understand one thing. An appointment-driven business, that's just a guideline. I've been doing it for over 20 years. We have a lot of appointments, predefined slots. Appointment reminders go out, emails, texts, phone calls. It's just a guideline. My day never goes according to the appointments. So there's going to be, and I'm sharing this with the property owner and everybody here, there's going to be a burden that we are not discussing and or acknowledging simply because of the nature of the business. Yes, walk-in would be worse. Yes, appointments are structured. Yes, it's a schedule. There's still an overlap. There's still an underlap. They show up early, they show up late. It's not going to go as proposed, and I'm not discrediting the proposer, but if there was room for 3 more and or a little bit of help, it's only going to help everybody, both the abutters and the property owner. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ross, John, anything to add?
Sure, Kevin, I have a couple of comments.
Thank you, John.
Just, sure. One, for Mr. Cruz, does the demo plan show those 3 spaces at 10 by 20 foot dimension?
I believe I don't have a demo plan, so there's not much to demo on site.
No, the demonstration plan, not a
Oh,
not a demolition plan.
I'm sorry, demonstration plan. These spots are 9 by 20.
Second, if those are going to be the preferred alternative here for the planning board, you should note that under section 24D7, there is a prohibition against backing out of parking spaces onto streets. And I know we mentioned earlier that there's a possibility for these to be 3-point turns and to get out facing forward on State Road, but chances are folks will just back up and that could create a safety issue. So something for the board to consider. And the last would be that space that I believe Mr. Rosa had brought up at the end, not being able to back out straight. I would be concerned with that because of the riprap that is proposed there, and potentially a car backing right out onto that stormwater feature and bottoming out. And that's all my comments.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay. So at this time, I think we've heard from everybody present. We have options. We can close the public hearing. We can then continue on with the site plan review. We can continue the public hearing until either our next meeting or the meeting after, at which time you could show us additional changes to the plan, address these issues. Those are really we really have those 2 options to move forward right now. Either we take a vote on it as is, or we have you come back. But we don't close out the public hearing. We reopen the public hearing. We address these issues. So I'm going to leave that with the engineers.
Yeah, I would say, I think all the board members and the abutters had some really good points. I'd like to continue it to the next hearing and let me go back and do some homework and see what else I can come up with and make some of these edits and requests that you guys have asked for tonight and come back with a revised plan for the next hearing, if that's okay with the board members and you, Mr. Chair.
Ross, is that possible? How's our agenda look for the next 2 weeks from now?
There's going to already be a public hearing open for proposed subdivision.
Okay,
Other than that, there is a site plan review and an A&R.
okay. So
That's
it
it.
sounds like we have room.
Yeah,
for
I would say.
2
Yep.
weeks. Okay, so what's the board have to say about that? Do I have any?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, so I have a motion by Nick Cyclepatis to continue this public hearing to our, let me get a right date here. Is that September 23rd?
Correct.
Okay, to our September 23rd meeting. Do I
Kevin,
have?
I'll second. I'll second.
Okay, Helio Rosa, second that. All in favor, Nick Cyclepatis,
Yes.
Helio Rosa,
Yes.
Margaret Sweet,
Yes,
Kevin Estes,
Yes.
Kevin Mello, yes. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin, did you want me to stick around for anything further, or was that it?
Ross, you good?
I'm good. Thank you, John. I
Okay.
appreciate your help.
Yep, that's
Sure
it, John.
thing. Thank you.
thanks, John.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Nice to see you again, Margaret.
You too.
Okay, so we will reconvene the public hearing in 2 weeks. We don't need another vote because we already voted it. On to administrative items. I will need a motion to table agenda item number 1, site plan review, to the 23rd also.
Move.
I'll
So-
make that.
Okay, so I have a motion by Nick Cyclepatis, second by Margaret Sweet. All in favor, Nick Cyclepatis,
Yes.
Margaret Sweet,
Yes,
Kevin Estes,
Yes.
Helio Rosa,
Yes.
and Kevin Mello, yes. Agenda item, administrative item number 2, site plan review for 10 Bridge Street. Ross,
Mhm.
got everything, all the papers in order?
Yes, we received in the most recent plan set, we did receive the architectural plans and the lighting plan. I had a bit of correspondence with the engineer, or the architect rather, about the lighting plan, which is noted in your report, which I'm hoping they'll speak to a bit to make it public. If anyone's present from here.
Okay, so go ahead if somebody's present from the engineer.
My name is Nate Ginsberg. I'm with Brewster Thornton Group Architects representing Dartmouth Fire District Number 1. Here to speak for the applicant.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Ready for us to start?
Yeah, whenever you're.
Great. So this is continued from the last meeting where we met and did a pretty extensive presentation on the project and the property. There were a few items that were listed for us to address and come back and represent in front of the board, one of which you've addressed already, which was the drawing set that had been approved by all of the other town agencies. At this point in the portal, we have approval from all other reviewers with the exception of this board. The set that has incorporated all the comments for all of the other comments that we have received has been distributed, and you now have that complete set. When we were here previously, there were 3 additional variances that were suggested we put on the drawings. Those are now on our drawings requesting waiver for the landscaping requirements, and then parking proximity to an intersection and to a residential neighborhood. Those have all been incorporated onto the drawings. There was a question previously about whether the generator was a structure or not, whether it should be in a setback, and I believe that that has now been answered, and that is not considered a structure. I can ask our civil engineer, who is also on with me today, just to speak to any changes that have been made or updates that have been made. I believe the last comments we got were from the DPW. We've addressed those concerns. Dan, do you want to just give us an update on what's happened since our last meeting?
Yeah, thank you, Nate. For the record, my name is Dan DeCesaris. I'm a professional engineer and project manager with Joe Casali Engineering in Warwick, Rhode Island. Yeah, as Nate mentioned, the most updated site plan before you has been updated from our last meeting. We've incorporated the additional waivers that we discussed, specifically landscaping, and there's several curb cut waivers that we're requesting, in addition to the previously discussed parking location and parking stall dimension waivers. Other than that, there have not been substantial changes to the plans. As Nate noted, we now have DPW approval as well for the stormwater design. So that's where we're at.
Okay, very good.
The issue of the lighting has been raised. So there are two areas that are work lights in the rear of the fire station. One are floodlights that are on the building. We are less than 1 foot candle at the property line from those lights. And we have also a pole light at the fueling station. Both of those are not intended to be used in a regular, in regular operations. Those are considered sort of emergency operations to be used infrequently.
I'd like to add to Nate, those lights are dark sky compliant, downward facing, to minimize light pollution.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak to that. Tim Lancaster, Dartmouth Fire District 1 Assistant Chief. Those lights are still on the plan basically because of me. And because our goal here through this project was to make sure that we worked with our neighbors and protected our neighbors the best we could throughout the project. And while there are some small foot candles that go outside the footprint, by removing those lights, it would be so detrimental to the neighborhood and the neighbors that I wanted to make sure it stayed in the plan so we could have this talk right here tonight. So obviously, we as a fire department, we need to function, and we need to function regardless of the time of day. And there are certain tasks that we just have to do occasionally in the evenings. One is we have to fuel our trucks, and two is if we have a fire, we have to put the trucks back together so they're ready for the next fire. And that has to be done regardless of time of day or night. Currently, we have a floodlight on the back of the building similar to we're gonna be there now, and we've had it there since the 70s. We currently have a fuel tank light that is on the building, and it's an outward-facing light. We've gotten away from that. We have an inward-facing light to try to better protect the neighbors from having impact. The alternative to this is if we had no lights, we would still have to perform all of those functions. And our only available option to do that would be to use our own lighting on our trucks, which would be a catastrophic impact on the neighborhood. I think the fuel tank light puts out 4,800 lumens. I looked it up. Our trucks have 8 lights on them, our scene light trucks, which we would have to use in the event of needing to fuel. Each one of those trucks puts out 19,000 lumens. They all come on at the same time. That's 152,000 lumens outward facing at 10 feet high. The impact would be devastating on the neighbors. And that is what we've been trying to not have happen during this entire project. And we've worked really hard. We cost us a few months in design, probably just on some building aspects, just so we could make sure we had the neighbors' concerns taken into effect. In addition to that, obviously, for the lights on our trucks to be operating, our trucks have to be running. It's another policy that we don't have. When we fuel now, we shut the trucks off. When we have to repack hose in the evening, we shut the trucks down. Those trucks and those diesel engines would have to be running, in addition to the fact that we'd be dumping all sorts of like contamination out into the neighborhood unnecessarily. It's not what we do now. It's not what we want to do in the future. And on top of that, these new trucks now, we can't even control the idle. So when they sense an electrical load, they automatically idle up. So those trucks would be running at high idle, which would be even worse. So I'd ask you to consider that while some of these foot candles will go out slightly, and while there are physical barriers that are not shown here that would prevent any spillage anyway, as well as a massive amount of natural vegetation that prevents that spillage. This is far better, and that's why I wanted to make sure you're aware of all the circumstances, because sometimes just looking at the plan, you got to put a little bit of reality as to kind of how that's going to be used. And as the engineer stated, these lights are not on all the time. It's not like we're lighting. This is not what you'd call building lighting or parking lot lighting. This is on demand, only when needed lighting. So no timers, no sensors, nothing like that. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Tim, you brought up a lot of great points there. How often would you say that you might be fueling at night? Or is that just sort of an emergency situation when a truck is running low on fuel at night? Typically, you'd just fuel it during the day, correct?
We try to fuel during the light day when we can. However, depending on what the nature of the event is that we go out for, if the truck needs fuel, it needs fuel. I mean, there's nothing we can do about that. So.
Right. So one important thing to just to note is that there's about a 4-foot retaining wall in this back corner where we're showing the pole mounted light at the fueling station. So it is lower in that backyard, and then there is currently a fence that runs along the back of this property from the neighbor, which will help screen that light. It is very densely vegetated back there, so there is also a buffer as well.
And these lights are less detrimental than what's currently existing, is that correct?
They're less detrimental than the option, which would be to basically turn on the truck light and to use a light from the fire truck to light this area, which would involve leaving that fire truck running.
And on top of that, Mr. Chairman, like I mentioned, I think I mentioned earlier, we currently have the existing floodlight on the back of the building for that purpose.
Correct. And that's what I was.
You know that lights from the 70s and the 80s certainly don't have the control of new lighting that you have nowadays. So, and the fuel tank light is outward facing right now. We're going to be moving to an inward property facing light, so to help reduce that.
Yeah, which would be a typical fixture.
Very good. Thank you. So any other questions? Any questions from the board? I was there when the chief just reviewed and discussed the generator with Ross. So that is not an issue. I believe.
Yeah, Kevin, can I make a comment to that?
Yes.
Just a comment, 2 comments. I did some additional work on my end regarding the generator. I was the one that raised the concern about the generator as whether it's a structure or not. And given the responses that have been made and my own work, I no longer am concerned with the generator location. I'll also make a comment regarding the lighting. I can certainly see and appreciate the effort that has gone into mitigating the challenges with the lighting. In my own view, this does seem like an improvement. The fact that we're going inward facing, outward versus outward facing, the obstructions that are occurring, I think, and also given the restrictions of the site itself, I envision that this is a better solution than exists in that what could exist otherwise. And it's really just a comment that this is a lot of good effort to mitigate any concerns.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else from the board?
I just have one question for Ross, I believe. Do we have everything now, Ross, that we need? Are there any notes missing that should be on the plan that aren't?
I do not think so. I think everything's been covered since the last meeting.
Since the last meeting, everything's all set?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ross.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so with that being said, do I have a motion from the board?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve made by Margaret Sweet. Do I have a second?
Second.
Was that Nick Cyclepatis second that? All in favor? Margaret Sweet,
Yes.
Nick Cyclepatis,
Yes.
Kevin Estes,
Yes.
Helio Rosa,
Yes.
and Kevin Mello, yes. And for the record, please let it show, even though I was not at the last meeting, I did watch it and I was filled in completely on this. So I believe there will be a form that I'll sign to attest to that, but I am voting fully informed. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
All right, next on our agenda, administrative item number 3, approval not required, 19 Harbor Street. Ross?
Yes, okay. So this is just an A&R plan for the reconfiguration of map 117, lot 143 into 2 lots. The proposed lot 1 will have frontage on both Harbor and Elm Terrace, and the proposed lot 2 will have frontage on Harbor Street and Pleasant Street. There are not any wetlands on either of the proposed lots. This is currently in the general residence zoning district, and both of the proposed lots comply within the 15,000 feet minimum of the general residence district. It satisfies section 1.101.a of the subdivision regulations, which states that every lot to be created has frontage of the distance required by the zoning bylaw on a public street or a street the town clerk certifies is maintained and used as a public street. In case there's anyone here to speak to it, now would be the opportunity.
Good evening. For the record, Steve Giosa with SciTech, representing the applicant this evening. I think Ross explained it pretty clearly. It's a fairly straightforward Form A with 2 conforming lots, an existing house on one, some residual land being created into a second lot. And without taking up any more of the board's time, I can either share the screen or answer any questions. But I think this is a pretty basic application.
Okay, why don't we see if there's any questions from the board first? Anyone have any questions? Okay. Not seeing any questions, so do I have a motion from the board?
Motion to accept?
I have a motion made by
Approve.
Kevin Estes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Helio Rosa. All in favor, Kevin Estes,
Yes.
Helio Rosa,
Yes.
Myra Sweet,
Yes.
Nick Cyclepatis,
Yes.
Kevin Mello, yes.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, next will be the election of board officers and other appointments. We don't need to make any major decisions tonight, or we can. Ross, do you have a list of the different?
Yes, I believe I do. I have the folder. There should be one in your packet unless that got left out.
I'm looking at it right now. It is, where are we? Page 139 of our electronic packet.
Yeah, it was a large packet, yes.
We have, so Helio, this is different boards that the planning board, we kind of divide and conquer. And every year, after we get a full board, we all, take volunteers for the different boards, these different committees. So that's what we're looking at. What we don't have is who is on these current committees. So I see Kevin Estes and Nick Cyclepatis on charter review.
Are we talking about present or proposed?
Well, that's what it says next to it, so I'm assuming that is present.
No.
I don't know that I knew that, Kevin.
You got volunteered.
I think I made a suggestion that if it, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think I might have shared the fact that when I can get to it outside of my work schedule, I'd be happy to, or be an alternate. I think I floated that very loosely at one of our earlier meetings at Town Hall.
Okay,
Kevin, I took this document from the previous packet that we had when this was last previously discussed. I don't remember the exact date, but that's where the source of this is from.
pretty safe to assume it was probably April of last year,
That
after
would-
the election, April.
That would track. Yes. Yep.
Okay, and really, this will only be until next April. Or late April, early May. So what are we proposing? I think Margaret had expressed, Margaret, you wanted to stay on Serpide, correct?
No, I did not want to stay on Serpide.
You do not want to
Stay
stay
on
on,
CPC, if I could.
you would
I'm
like to,
on CPC and I'm on Lincoln Park and I took over Serpide because Chris left.
Wasn't Chris on charter review?
Chris was
He
on charter
was.
review also. Yes, yes. And I'm
So-
on the Lincoln Park Approval Authority. I've never had a meeting on that. So I'm on.
I've been on this board 11 years and we've never had a meeting for that,
Oh,
so.
thank you.
So it's pretty safe. I'm currently on the harbor management plan and on the soil board, which meets about twice a year. Harbor management has not met for a good while, probably 6 months. So Margaret, the biggest one is Serpide. That's the busiest one. I
Yeah,
believe.
it's tough for me because sometimes I have meetings on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, Kevin. If I have a Serpide meeting, they meet on Wednesday. Then I have the community preservation on Tuesday. Then I have a planning board on Monday. That's a lot, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. It doesn't happen often, but it happens like every other month.
When does
It-
Serpide meet?
Serpide meets it's in person, correct, Margaret?
No, we're still doing Zoom.
You are still doing Zoom,
Yeah.
okay. And when is the meeting?
The next meeting we have is the 25th, and that's the annual meeting, and that's a dinner meeting.
What
Okay.
day is it normally though? Is it on Wednesdays?
Yes, it's on Wednesdays.
And is that at 6 PM?
6 PM, I believe it is.
Okay. So it's one of the most active boards.
Community preservation is too. We meet.
That is too, absolutely. So you've got the perfect storm. You've got the two
Right.
busiest
When
committees.
does CPC meet?
Tuesdays. Every other week,
At what time?
like planning, 6:30.
Okay. So I guess let me ask, is there anyone that feels strongly? Let's go down the list. Is there anyone that would like any of these boards? That feels a pull towards something?
Kevin, what is the alternate board member for special permits?
The ultimate board member is generally reserved. We've been using the last person out that is active. It's simply a sixth member of this board. So let's say like last time it was a public hearing for a special permit tonight. If I couldn't have made it tonight, we have been using Lori Ann Miller because she retired from this board a couple of years back. She's well-versed. She spent 30 years on the board. And I can tell this board that I'm going to request that she be the alternate board member, continue on, because she did say she would. But in the past, it's been other past board members who step up to the plate should someone not be able to make it for personal reasons. So really, I'm looking, the hardest one here is Serpide. anyone interested? And do we, what is, Margaret, help me here, Southeast
They go
Regional
over, yes,
Planning
the regional economic
Economic?
development. Okay, and they go over, they have quite a bit of weight. When we do a master plan, we use them. Their meetings usually last about 8 o'clock to 8, maybe 8:30 if it's a big meeting, okay? They have commissioners, they have planning, planners, from the area regions, Wareham, you know, anything that's big, that Attleboro, all over, anything that's big, they review, they fund. So it's an important board. It's just that, the Monday, I like community preservation, okay, a lot, because I'd like to stay on that. But I'm learning a lot about through Serpent. But again, it's too much Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for me. But Serpent's a good board if you want to see what's going on in the area. We have, for instance, the bicycling path that's going through. They're very instrumental in doing that. They're instrumental in Department of Transportation. So you would learn a lot at Serpent.
I want to share something. I don't know how and if it's possible, but for the most part, my work does not allow me to be free often before 6:30, 6:40 p.m. I have a strong interest in Serpent because I feel like it really plugs you into the bigger picture. And I would love to include that and diversify my mind and what I can offer to the board by being involved in Serpent. I just can't be the primary. If it's something maybe we can split, and if it's still by Zoom with planning, I'll just have to take an hour of work off of my office schedule and wrap things up at 5:30 or 5:45 to be safe. But if it helps our board fill the seat and decreases the burden so that, for instance, Margaret, it's not fair to you to have 3 meetings in a row. I'm willing to do that. I just don't think it's reasonable for me to assume the primary role, being transparent with everyone, that it's going to conflict with work every meeting. I don't know if that helps alleviate the burden.
Yes, but I don't know how long it's going to stay on Zoom. See, that's the problem, because it's in Taunton.
That is tough. Then I'd have to leave.
So, yes, so that is the problem, because their building is in Taunton. So, they may stay on, I don't know, a couple of months, or they may say, you know, I don't know.
Sure.
I'd have to ask that question. Like our next meeting, it's a dinner meeting and it's an annual meeting, so that, you know, it's at Venus de Milo.
When is that?
The 25th of September.
Okay.
Kevin, one comment if I can.
Yes, Celia.
I am the new guy. As of right now, my term expires in April. I don't know what that means, if that means anything. I want to do my part to with this board and represent as best as I can. But I also, in full transparency, need some guidance of where I could be most helpful, given that I am the newest member, still very green in this world, that my term does technically expire in April. And I don't know where I could be best used.
Okay. I'm in the same boat as you. I'm up in April, and you know, I'll be the first to sign your nomination papers for you once you get them. But I will not be asking you to do the same, if you know what I mean. So I mean, I spent time on Serpent. Margaret spent time on Serpent. I enjoyed the meetings. It's nice to hear what they're doing from, you know, other communities, compare notes. I don't want to dictate your time. It was, when I first started, it was a good way for me to get jump started. I don't know what your availability is. You know, they don't take attendance. In the past, what we have done is, when I was on it, Christine would go. If Christine couldn't go, I would go. So there'd be a representative from Dartmouth. She was our alternative. We're not in the position to send, that was part of her workload. So she'd factor it into her schedule. We are not going to pay John as a consultant to go to represent us. And we're not going to pay Ross take his time away from the office where we need him. So it is a time constraint. I don't feel that no matter who gets appointed to this, I don't feel that anyone will be going to the dinner meeting, their first meeting. I don't think
Oh,
that's.
no, that's not what I was implying because I'm not.
No, but that's the next
Yeah.
meeting,
Yeah,
we're already missing it.
meeting.
We're already missing that. And that's once a month still, right?
Yeah, it's still once a month, but they do
Oh.
take attendance now.
Oh, they do. They did not before.
Yeah.
But here we are. Here's September. So then we have October, November, December, January, February, March.
Right,
So we're talking 6 meetings, Helio.
right.
So
Alternate for him, if he wants to do it, and he can't, I know he works far away. I would still, I'd be an alternate for him if he wants to try it, and he can't make it, then he'll call me and I'll show up.
Helio,
I'd certainly consider it. Again, full transparency, I could not, just because of my own work commitments
Right.
in my life right now, I could not commit to starting the meetings until November, probably.
Okay.
I don't mind taking the lead on it if everybody's got issues, as long as I've got somebody else to back me
Yeah,
up.
I mean, we're talking 6 meetings at
Right.
best, at best. So then why don't we do that? That Kevin, that would really be helpful. Kevin can be the lead and Helio can be the second. For Serpide.
After November.
Yes. So hopefully Kevin can make the October.
I got
meeting.
you.
Helio
Kevin, does that work for you?
I mean, once a month, I could make it work, I imagine.
Yeah, and we can probably tag team it in some way. I mean, if you want to take this on and I'll be your alternate, we can tag team it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Excellent. So next on the list is soils, which I know that inside and out, what's expected and all that. So I will stay with soil. If no one has any objections. Margaret would like to say with CPC. So if no objections, we will stay with that.
What do you know about Harbor, Kevin? Are they trying to put something back together?
I have not heard from them. So I was gonna, I'll stay with it because again, you don't need to bring me up to speed if they do decide to meet sometime. So I'll stay with the soil and with the harbor.
If Harbor comes back online and it works, I'm happy to take it. And it's obviously a passion of mine.
You keep that in mind in 6 months. Agricultural Preservation Trust.
I think I'm on that now, but we've never met.
Okay.
Keep that one, Kevin.
Keep that one, Kevin.
I'll keep
There
that
you go. So Lincoln Park, Margaret, you're on that now?
I'm on that, yeah. I mean, we had a meeting, I'll stay on that.
Okay. And Ross, you are taking notes on these?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I started to, and then I got
No worries.
sidetracked. So charter review, to be honest, guys, I think is done for a while, right?
I think so.
I think that's done. So let's just leave it the way it says. And then open space, who's on that in recreation?
That's me.
Kevin, yeah.
Okay.
And I think that was largely a function of the master plan.
Okay. As was the harbor management. So did they ever meet or did you ever do anything with that?
Oh, yeah, we met quite a bit, but it
Okay.
was all good stuff. We had a lot of focus groups. I enjoyed it, but I'm not sure anything's really gonna happen on it. but I'd like to, that's a passion of mine, so I'd like to keep that.
Okay. Perfect. So I think we're good. I think we're good. And then, if no objections, again, Lori Ann Miller said that she would stay on. She's been acting as our alternate. We don't use them often because this board, has had good attendance, from its members. So, but she is there if we need it, if there's, a conflict with one of our board members, if Margaret sells a piece of property to somebody who needs to come before us for a special permit, she must recuse herself. If one of us apply for a special permit, those are the different situations where we would need her. So I think that takes care of that. Do we need to vote on that? Or when in doubt, vote. So I have a motion.
Listen,
Yeah,
apparently
motion.
we can get put on a committee without even being here, so do we really need to
Yes.
vote?
No, that's volunteer, the Russian style volunteer.
I make a motion to approve.
So I have a motion by Margaret Sweet.
Second.
I think Kevin Estes beat you out, Nick, so second by Kevin Estes, all in favor, Margaret Sweet,
Yes.
Kevin Estes,
Yep.
Nick Cyclepatis,
Yes.
Helio Rosa,
Yes.
and Kevin Mello, yes. Okay. Minutes. Any questions on the minutes of August 19th?
Make a motion to accept and file.
You have a motion by Nick Cyclepatis,
Second.
second by Kevin Estes, all in favor, Nick Cyclepatis,
Yes.
Kevin Estes,
Yes.
Margaret Sweet,
Yes.
Helio Rosa,
Yes.
and Kevin Mello will abstain. Correspondence, City of Fall River, Freetown, New Bedford, and Westport. Any questions on any of their correspondence or any discussion on them?
Motion to acknowledge and file.
We have a motion by Kevin Estes to acknowledge and file,
Second.
second by Nick Cyclepatis, all in favor, Kevin Estes,
Yes.
Nick Cyclepatis,
Yes.
Margaret Sweet,
Yes.
Helio Rosa,
Yes.
Kevin Mello, yes. And for your information / new business. First on that is Zoning Board of Appeals. Any discussion on the recent ZBA? At all? We have,
Yeah, I didn't even see that, Kevin.
there's Baker Brook
Oh,
Road.
I did see that. Yes. Okay.
Yep, so it's Baker Brook Road. Nothing earth shattering. Okay, subcommittee reports. So Helio, you go to your committees, you come back under subcommittee reports. This is where you would fill us in on what the rest of the board on what was discussed at your meeting. Has anyone had any meetings?
No meetings.
Tomorrow.
You have tomorrow.
CPC's tomorrow.
Okay. Okay, so no subcommittee report. Ross.
Okay.
planners report.
First would be to, over the next 2 weeks, kind of come up with a couple of points for priority lists to be drafted for the next meeting on September 23rd. So if everyone could do that for the next 2 weeks, that would be wonderful. Additionally, we will have to, well, you all will have to vote on the planning consultant hours up to the time of the packet. So I've kind of organized it in an Excel of the week that, he was used, the project in question, and the amount of hours. So, I'll kind of do this per meeting of just what was on that week, or those 2 weeks to be discussed, if anything, and to be voted on. So that's what would be next.
Okay, so, you want us, so that's really all that you have, those two things? So we should vote on the hours now, or? Okay.
Yes, that's all that I have for you guys, yes.
Okay, so we have the hours in the packet, for a total of 7 hours. We are, and this covers a 2-week period. Is that correct?
Yes, it's from when I first used him to date, just because the lapse in meetings with the holiday and the meeting that I was not present in.
Okay, so we are allowed up to 10 hours, but the few hours we use, the longer we can use the consultant. So we have a total of 7 hours at this point, and Ross is keeping track of them. So do I have a motion? Do I have questions, first of all?
No, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, so I have a motion made by Margaret Sweet,
Second.
second by Kevin Estes. All in favor, Margaret Sweet,
Yes.
Kevin Estes,
Yes.
Nick Cyclepatis,
Yes.
Helio Rosa,
Yes.
Kevin Mello, yes. Okay,
And Kevin, if I can quickly chime in, since this agenda was created, I've spoken with Brian. He's actually present. I know you and I spoke about this.
Oh,
He's
he
actually he's present now
Okay.
to discuss the ADU update. So
okay, that's pretty much my chairperson. We can touch base, but let's there's been a lot of controversy about our bylaw. And now that the state has their own bylaw, and I've read some, but I don't read or write or understand legal. So we've asked Brian to come here and decode it into New Bedford, Dartmouth, English. Brian,
Good
welcome.
evening, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your confidence that I can translate and understand legal.
Dummy down, please.
Macro, the town is in a better position than a lot of municipalities in response to the statutory change. Because what this revision to Chapter 48 has done has eliminated the ability to have a special permit regime for ADUs. So we didn't have one anyway. So we're not behind the 8 ball. There's a number of towns that this law goes into effect, this statutory change goes into effect in February. So there are a lot of towns that have special permit regimes that are scrambling to get a new type of approval process in place before the statute goes into effect in February. You don't have to worry about that. It's as of right now under the bylaw. What the statute provisions have done in large part is set not only has it mandated as of right ADUs wherever you have single family zoning. That's the big thing. If you have single family zoning, you can't prohibit ADUs and you can't require a special permit. It's as of right. You can't require site plan review. You can impose reasonable restrictions and requirements in terms of dimensions, setbacks, that type of thing. So there's not a lot in our bylaw that is directly contradictory to the new statutory requirements. The 3 main ones are you have to allow it in every single residence zone district. And right now we only allow it in single residence A, B, C in general. So the other districts that have single family homes, such as neighborhood business, village business, you're going to have to allow ADUs there as well. So that's going to have to be updated. Currently, our bylaw requires the owner to live in one of the units. That is no longer something that you can require. Both the principal and the accessory unit can both be rented out. Third, you require two parking spots for the ADU. Now per statute, you can only require one. And if the ADU is within half a mile of public transportation, you can't require any spots.
Wow.
Crazy.
So those are the three things that I would say our bylaw directly is in contradiction to the statute at this point. The upshot of those is, even if you don't change them at the fall town meeting, like scramble to get it done, it's so black and white that the building commission would just be obligated to disregard those provisions of the bylaw. It's not a matter of interpretation. Our bylaw says at least two spots. The statute said you can only require one. So that's, that's an easy, the statute trumps the bylaw. It'd be nice to have our bylaw updated to create, so there's no confusion. But again, this is not the case where these towns are having this special permit regime, and in the absence of getting something new set up, like a site plan review process, when the statute goes into effect and their special permit regime is no longer valid, then they don't have anything. It's just as of right with no strings, no limitations whatsoever. So those towns have to get their act in gear, because otherwise their current system is wiped out and they have nothing to replace it. Whereas the general basis of how we're doing things is still fine and in place. There's just little things on the margins that are going to get overturned. So obviously you don't want a bylaw that contradicts statute, and we should update it. But I don't think there's a real urgency if you don't want to rush to get this done for the fall town meeting. There's also the fact that you have to contend with our bylaw has 1,000 square feet is the max, 1,000 square feet is the maximum for ADUs. The state, this is where it's weird. The state doesn't say you can't have ADUs of more than 900 square feet. What the state says is, if an ADU meets our definition, which includes it being a max of 900 square feet or half the square footage of the principal residence, whichever is less, if it meets that requirement, then the town can't prevent it from being there. Well, we are in fact more generous anyway. So there's nothing wrong with that. But what that means is, technically, any ADU that you allow greater than 900 square feet or greater than half of the square footage of the principal dwelling, you can have whatever restrictions you want, even if that's not what the statute says, because those are not technically ADUs under the statute. And have I just lost anyone? Please tell me.
I think I may have followed you, but I need you to repeat it.
So for the purposes of all these limitations on what the town can do relative to ADUs, parking spaces, where they have to go, occupancy limitations, all those things that are now limited for what the town can do in terms of options, those limitations only apply if the ADU meets the state definition. And the ADU under the state definition is 900 square feet max, or half the square footage of the principal dwelling, whichever is less. Our bylaw allows a greater square footage for ADUs. You can go up to 1,000 square feet, and I don't believe it talks about anything in relation to ratio to the principal structure. So it's just a flat 1,000 square feet.
Right. Which
means there are ADUs allowed in the town that are not statutory definitional ADUs. So that is a sub-component of ADUs in the town where there is no state restriction on how you want to deal with them. Which is both a blessing and a curse, because that means if you want to have more restrictive things regarding how many parking spaces you have to require, regarding whether or not the owner has to be an occupant of one of the units, you can do that for these larger ADUs. It also means you have to write a more complicated bylaw to be clear to the public. If it's a statutory ADU, these are your standards. And if they're a non-statutory ADU, here are the extra restrictions that we are imposing. And we can definitely do that. It's just going to be a more complicated drafting process to make clear when those extra restrictions apply and when they don't.
It's kind of a loophole for us. If someone says, no, I need 1,000 square feet, well, then you must show two parking spots, even if they're right next to.
You
other-
could do a special permit regime if you wanted to. You can do whatever you want because the state isn't mandating ADUs of 1,000 feet.
So, okay, all right. I mean, the bulk of this is not contradicting our intent of our bylaw.
No,
The real
that's what I'm
contra-
saying. Dartmouth is in a better position than a lot of municipalities who are
Right.
scrambling right now.
So, number 5 is really the big
Yeah.
contradiction or the big difference, I believe. In
So-
is it true? Is it detached? Is
So
it not?
this is where there is what the statute says, and there's what is being promoted by some advocacy groups. Nowhere in the statute, I've read it a bunch of times, as far as I can tell, unless I'm lying, nowhere in the new statute provisions does it say you have to allow detached ADUs or treat detached ADUs the same as attached ADUs. All it says is you have to allow ADUs of a certain size in single residence districts by right. And you can set reasonable restrictions on how they operate. And so then the only question becomes is limiting detached ADUs to be buildings that were in existence before 2006, is that a reasonable restriction on ADUs or not? I would submit it is, because you're not banning someone for putting an ADU on their property. You're just saying how they can do it. So I think that's fine.
Could be challenged at some point. Somebody
It could be
try.
challenged at some point. The additional quandary is this. In the new statutory provisions, for the record, this is chapter 150 of the Acts of 2024. Specifically told the state, and I believe it's whatever agent, we used to say DHCD, but it's now some other acronym. The housing agency for the state is supposed to create regulations or guidelines to effectuate and interpret these new statutory provisions. So we may get regulations that provide more clarity on this. And then we can decide if we want to, have a fight about that. As of now, I don't think you need to do anything. If you wanted to, you could create some more explicit firm.
Brian, you muted.
You're muted.
Thank you.
Explicit.
That was an errant mouse click. I appreciate that. Right now, the bylaw says if you create an attached ADU, you have to make sure that that attached ADU looks like a barn or garage or basically, something traditionally part of the single family residence. You can't make it look like a duplex, essentially. It has to look like a single family residence, and the accessory structure looks like a, part of that. There's no similar language for that for the detached in our bylaw because you said they have to be pre-2006 buildings. So by implication, obviously, they're going to be an old barn or garage or something like that. But if you end up having to allow new builds of detached ADUs, there's nothing preventing someone right now from building essentially a brand new second house on the property, a smaller house, like one of those tiny houses, prefab made. And it looks like a house as opposed to an accessory structure to the principal residence. So you may want to consider specific language relating to detached ADUs about what it has to look like. You may also want to consider creating site plan review for that purpose as well. Because right now you're leaving to the building commissioner to determine whether or not it meets the look requirements for how it's supposed to be as an ADU. You may want to, given how many more of these we may be getting, you may want to decide this is now warranting of a site plan review process. So those are some thoughts that you may want to bandy about. Again, there's nothing that I see that requires you to do anything right now. It would also be, I would be worried about you guys rushing and doing something in the next month or so to try to get something for the fall town meeting. But you can if you want to. There's no right or wrong answer here. I would be very happy defending the idea that your detached ADU limitations right now are a reasonable restriction on ADUs that don't preclude someone from having an ADU. Ultimately, though, I'm not the judge if it comes to it. The upside is technically, I don't believe the Attorney General has approved these bylaw revisions we made back in the spring yet. But I don't see how they can't be approved because the new statute doesn't go into effect until February. So right now, the AG has to look at them under the current statutory provisions and decide whether or not they're valid under those, which they should be. So at that point, they would be on the books and it would be up to someone to fight them. And I think they're defensible as they are, but it's not a bad idea for you guys to add some additional protections if you're sufficiently worried about people trying to build brand new detached ADUs.
So aren't they supposed to approve that within 90 days, 120 days, or is there no time?
Yeah, so we're coming up on 90 days.
Coming up on the 90, okay.
Yeah.
So the other question that I had, so I agree, and I don't think we should, we can't react because we don't know how they're going to interpret it. Once we see the guidelines, that's when this board should take action and make adjustments when we see.
If we had a special permit regime, I would be telling you guys unequivocally, you have to get something together now.
Yes. Yes, which this board chose not to go with the special permit and make it by right. The second ADU is kind of a scary thought for me, and I know other members of this board.
So this is weird about that, is that the statute literally read, what the new statute said is, for more than one accessory dwelling unit in a single-family residential zoning district, there shall be a special permit for the use of land or structures for the accessory dwelling unit. Literally read, it says that you have to create a special permit regime for extra ADUs. My understanding is the state has already been saying, no, the intent is that you can do that if you want to. So my guess is we're going to get a guideline clarifying that shall doesn't really mean shall, or maybe they will tweak the legislation, but it doesn't seem to have ever been the intent that it's basically, you're allowed to limit it to special permit if you want to, but you don't have to even have a second one. It seems like they were trying to say, no, we're not saying you have to have more than one by right. But it's admittedly wholly poorly written in terms of the actual legislation language, and literally read it could require you to create a special permit regime for the second ADU or the third ADU, which is bonkers.
Oh, crazy.
So is there any limit? I mean, can we just say, no, we're not allowing second ADU?
Right.
Yes, so that is, everyone seems to agree that's what the statute is meant to be saying. It's just
Okay,
not literally what
that,
it says.
Not that you have to have a special permit.
But that
Just-
you're allowed to use a special permit regime for more than one if you want to have more than one. But that there's no obligation that you allow more than one.
So anybody with an acre of property could put up 3 ADUs and rent them out to UMass Dartmouth students, and now you have a.
So this is where I'm saying is that's literally what the language seems to say, but that's not what the state is saying the language means. So
Okay.
again, I'm just gonna wait, we're gonna wait for the guidelines, because
Don't
here's the
jump,
thing.
don't overreact at this point. in
No,
other
because
words.
here's the thing, what if someone applies for a special permit for a second ADU? What special permit are they applying for under our bylaw?
There's none.
It doesn't exist.
Right. They can't
So
do
first they'd have to sue somehow to create I don't even know how that would work. So it's by definition, mandating that a special permit regime get put in place is inherently contradictory. So that's why no one's taking this as being what it was meant to say. I just have to warn you that technically the new statutory language literally says there shall be a special permit for the use of any additional accessory dwelling unit. So
Okay.
that's, again, this is what happens when legislation gets rushed through and revised a dozen times, and then you end up with this.
Well, it looks so good on the news, though.
But all I can tell you is everyone I've talked to agrees that, and I believe I've even seen some things from the state, but they'll hold me to this, the saying that, oh, no, you can, if you want to do special permits, additional ones you can, but there's no obligation to do so.
The town doesn't have an obligation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, again, what I am warning you of is some overly ambitious attorney deciding to take a run on the statute
Make a name for themselves.
and see if they can like, hey, look, the statute says this, obviously, like it's, so that's what I'm letting you be aware of is, it's very poorly written.
Okay.
So if it's less than 900 square feet, we have to allow, we can't require that a family member lives in one of the spots.
Less than 900 square feet or half the square footage of the principal residence, whichever is less. But yes, if it meets that definition, you cannot require family or owner occupancy of any kind.
Okay.
Brian, and
Again,
also based on the
Yes, go
statute, it does not have to be attached, correct? That particular one does not have to be attached.
The statute doesn't talk about attached or detached at all. It makes no reference to it. What it says is you have to allow accessory dwelling units if they meet certain criteria, and that you can set reasonable restrictions on the dimensional and other aspects of those ADUs. So in my mind, if you want to continue to have detached ADUs only be in pre-2006 structures, I think that's a reasonable restriction.
Is site plan reviewed to determine whether it's consistent in nature?
The statute is explicit that you can have site plan review.
Okay.
So if you're worried about, like I said, if you're worried about that you're going to get a bunch of these and people are going to try to push the limit on the new statute, adding a site plan review in now, rather than putting on the building commissioner to make all these calls, is a way that you guys can go.
And Brian, with the statute going into effect in February and our town meeting only being in April, what happens in those 2 months?
Our town meeting is in June, so it'll be about 4 months.
Sorry, June.
What will happen is the specific provisions that I mentioned, the three of them, the parking, the zoning districts in which they are located, as well as the owner occupancy issue. Those three provisions, the building commissioner is just gonna have to disregard the language of the bylaw if anyone comes to get an ADU that meets the statutory requirements. And that's just, the rest of the bylaw is still valid. But to the extent that they say we only want one parking spot, well, then they get to have one parking spot. But if they want a 950 square foot ADU, then the entirety of the bylaw still applies. My recommendation would be, moving forward, you either scrap the 1,000 feet and just stick with the state's square footage definition, or you make the bylaw very clear about when certain restrictions and requirements apply and when they don't based on the square footage.
I'll share this, that I'd like to defend the work that we've done so far, because we did it with a lot of families and a certain kind of care. And that extra 100 square feet could accommodate some things that we discussed that at times of crises could make the difference between functional and not functional space. So I'm hoping as a board, we don't lose sight of everything we've done so far.
I agree with you, Nick. I want to keep it at 1,000 feet.
Which is fine, in certain of us, we have the area to show the parking spot. It's not we weren't overly restrictive on it. There will be people who say, I'm going to do 900 square feet, so I don't need to show a parking spot.
Right.
So that's their choice. So I think we are in a good spot. I don't think there's anything for us to do, at least until we see what their guidelines are. And hopefully we don't get to, because it was never our intent to have a village in the backyard. I mean, if there's 2, can there be 3? Can there be 4? Where does it stop?
And so the way ultimately, if the guidelines come down in a maximalist fashion, the way to handle that is with acreage requirements, square footage requirements, setback requirements.
Lot coverage.
lot coverage. You dimensionally make it like if someone has 10 acres, would they maybe be able to get? Sure, but you make it so that like the average lot is only going to be able to functionally get one. That's what you end up doing. Yeah, there are multiple ways that we can respond, and I think it's somewhat premature to brainstorm in detail until we see exactly
Correct.
what the state's going to say.
But I feel like we have a better grasp, based on this meeting and in what you've been telling us.
And I would hope that those guidelines, maybe their regulations are probably just going to be guidelines. I would hope they would come out before February, because otherwise the MMA, MMLA, and every single town administrator mayor is going to be screaming about how do we even know how we're supposed to do this? But, you know, who knows if that'll actually happen. Yeah, so that's I'm happy to answer any other questions. One other thing I just add that it's not technically, it's in the same statutory revisions, and it's not about ADU specifically, but it's still relevant, is there is another provision in the same statute that just passed that says that the state can determine that any of its own land is surplus and then sell it off for housing development, even if it's not zoned for housing.
Unbelievable.
And they're guaranteed 4 units per acre, no matter what zoning says. Even if the zoning says it's industrial and you can't have housing at all, the state could still build 4 units per acre. So, you know, my assumption is any state land in Dartmouth is most likely restricted by conservation or other deeded interest. And so the likelihood is very low, but I thought you guys would want to be aware of that anyway. And that just sort of got snuck in, and it's not even being talked about.
Wow.
Really horrible.
I don't know how much it would affect Dartmouth. I really don't.
Yeah, my assumption is probably not much, but you know,
but that's big. That's to be snuck in without the public really knowing it. Okay.
There's no frontage requirements or anything else, just 4 per acre?
So yes, so it the exact language says you can have so it's an overriding of use limitations, not dimensional requirements.
Okay.
So dimensions would stay the same. The use is what's changed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a guaranteed 4 unit per acre use, notwithstanding what zoning says.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Attorney Cruz? All right, then I guess that takes care of it.
Thanks for the update, Brian.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Brian.
you, Brian.
Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was the bulk of my report. We are proceeding to collect applications for the vacancy. Right now, that's pretty much all I have to report. As far as the search goes, we have 2 local applicants. We have several out of the area applicants, and we are going to extend it a little bit further. We will keep you posted as far as how the search goes. Any questions?
No.
All right, my favorite part.
Motion to adjourn.
Got a motion to adjourn by Kevin Estes and a second by Nick Cyclepatis. All in favor, Kevin Estes,
Yes.
Nick Cyclepatis,
Yes.
Margaret Sweet,
Yes.
Helio Rosa,
Yes.
Kevin Mello, yes. All right, everyone. Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Good
Good night.
night.